Hello, and welcome to the Cioffi Brothers podcast. I'm Ken.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're going to jointly be doing an old school review of The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
One of my personal favorite games of all time.
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously it's just a classic game.
It is, and as you can see, I am a huge fan, meaning I own it on my Game Boy Advance, my 3DS, I own an original copy, and have virtual console copies of pretty much on every system, the Wii and the Wii U.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, it's one of my earlier exposures to the Zelda franchise. I think the first game of Zelda that I ever played, I don't even think I even realized it was Zelda at the time, was the original on the old school Nintendo. And then after that, my next exposure was Link's Awakening, which we're going to touch upon in another podcast. But today, we're looking at A Link to the Past. So let's start with the pros. And we'll just kind of go through these together, one by one. And I think the first thing is the story. If you compare the story of the original to this one, this one's just so much more fleshed out.
It is just so much more prevalent, and you have as opposed to a general idea of what you need to do in the first game and even the second game.
The first one was very much, a lot of the story was portrayed in your booklet that you got with the game.
Yeah.
And there was an opening scroll. But with this, a lot of the storytelling actually happened within the context of the game. And it was just such an in-depth story. I remember playing it for the first time and just thinking like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool idea,
Yeah, it was definitely something not as seen in the day, but actually with the Super Nintendo being, I'm a huge Super Nintendo fan. It's one of my favorite consoles of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love it. This was the era of storytelling, and this really, even as simplistic as the story is, it set the bar for great games to come along, great RPGs. The SNES was known for its amazing RPGs.
Yeah.
And this action RPG just really did a great job.
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes back to another point that I've made with you before, is that I think it comes down to the limitations of the console. Obviously it was very advanced for the time, but with any new technology, there's limitations in what you're going to be able to do, and what that forces you to do is to be creative and to focus on the important aspects of it, the story, and making sure that there's a solid thread that's going to keep the viewer engaged.
Yeah, and that I guess brings us to one of our other pros is there's just so much they packed so much into this game.
Yeah.
That and it's not even like really amazingly out there things. It's just fun little things, fun little quirks, places to explore,
There's
stuff to
lots
find.
of neat little corners.
Yeah.
I remember the first time that I found, spoiler alert if you haven't played this game in the past 30 years or so,
Not that long for this one, yeah.
Under the bridge, where you find the man camping and he gives you a bottle.
Yep.
And it's like, it's so random because it's one of these things that you don't need that one bottle necessarily to beat the game. I mean, you could beat the game with, no bottles potentially.
You can beat it. Yeah, you can beat it with no bottles at all.
So the fact that this little vignette is there, and that you have the opportunity to kind of just explore the world and find these little secrets and hidden things. I mean, it's really a It's one of the trademarks of the franchise, that type of gameplay.
Fun fact, that's the first thing I do when I get the flippers.
Oh, is it?
Because it's one of my favorite spots because not only is it a fun little spot, but it also goes to one of our other pros, is it's a beautiful spot.
Beautiful pixel art. Yeah, that's definitely one of our pros.
It's just a nice, not to dwell on that one part, but it's a nice display of how well the game still looks to this
Yeah,
day
yeah.
with the
It stands up.
overshadow of
Yes,
the
with
of the
the
bridge,
bridge on the art,
and
yep.
the guy just sitting there with with the tent
His
nearby,
tent, he's
his
fishing.
campfire, he's fishing.
And I think you bring up a really good point. In relation to the beautiful art, is that especially in today's day and age, you're seeing a resurgence of this type of art because it is so so well loved and has such there's a nice nostalgia to it. But again, coming back to the fact that because there are those limitations, it forces you to be creative and make sprites and characters that have meaning and really look beautiful in their environment.
Yeah, and going back to the environment, another fun fact is that we just found out that the light world and the dark world, the two different aspects of the game that play a pivotal role in the storytelling, it's cool because the light world is actually, the dark world I should say, is actually just a retexture of the light world to conserve space.
Right. Which actually I did know that, but what the way I understood it is that what they only really saved were the changes because the two worlds are so similar.
Yeah.
They just saved the minor differences, and it's funny really when you play it, when you see how much a little change really does make a huge difference.
It makes even though it's just essentially a palette swap of the light world,
Right.
it feels like a different world. They made it feel
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
a different world,
Yeah.
and that's cool.
Yeah,
That speaks volumes to what they were able to do with the hardware and the software that they were presented with.
And it comes back to kind of our other point of there just being a lot to explore, just that, because this world was so, expansive and huge, and that there was so much to explore, you really got the opportunity. Like, I remember when the first time I played it, there were many times that I would get sidetracked from the main quest, just poking around, just looking around, just looking at things. And and that's half the fun of the Zelda franchise in general, is that you look around and you find places and you realize you can't get there yet because you don't have the right item for it.
Which is a staple of the franchise.
It is a staple of the franchise, but as we are older and we've played so many of these games before, we've been a little spoiled, because we know when we go to play a Legend of Zelda game, we get to a big, boulder that's in the way. Oh, well, I must need the bracelet for this, or the lift, for lift
something to lift it up, or maybe I need the bombs, or
maybe I need the bombs to blow this crack in the crack in the wall open.
Hook shot to get to the top of the mountain.
Hook shot to get top of the mountain here. So we've been a little spoiled by that, but the first time that we played it, it was such an interesting concept. You're like, well, why can't I get through here? There's got to be some way to get through here. There's a door on the other side of these blocks. Why can't I get through? And I remember the first time I got the lift, and I could lift the light colored blocks, but you can't do the dark colored blocks
because you need the Titans.
Because you need the Titans mitt. That's right. And
you get the Power Glove and then the Titans mitt.
Right.
The Dark World. Yeah.
So it was very interesting. It's just such a great thing. And actually, that brings us, to our next point. Is so many weapons in this game. There's so many neat, just weapons and upgrades and devices and things.
Yeah, just things you wouldn't really imagine using in a game. Like, this was my first exposure to a hook shot.
Right.
And I mean, not many other games use hook shots, but it used a hook shot. And I remember the hook shot to this day is still one of my favorite weapons. My default. Whenever I'm out exploring, I have it defaulted because you can stun. It's so versatile. You can stun the enemies. You can quickly get cross paths. Love the hook shot. But I mean, you got the hook shot. You got the ice rod. You got the fire rod. You got the cape, the cape, and then the cane, the two canes.
Cane of Samara and cane of
Luna, I believe it is.
Yep.
And it goes back to the whole exploring thing. Is you didn't get the ice cave in a dungeon. You didn't get the ice. You didn't get the ice rod in a dungeon.
That comes to my last point. If we can actually tie these two items together, is there's actually things to do beyond the main quest of the game. Like you said, some of these weapons aren't in dungeons. They're just out there in the world, and you could go through the game and just do the dungeons and just complete the game through the dungeons. and not ever touch these things.
Except for the ice rod, you need the ice rod.
Oh, okay.
For Turtle Rock.
Okay. But the other
That's how much
point
I played this game.
But there are other things like some of the hearts and heart pieces and stuff like that you don't necessarily need to get.
The cape, you don't need those.
You don't need them.
Just there. There's four bottles in the game. You don't need to find them all.
I don't think you even need to get any of them. Really.
Yeah, there's been many a playthrough where I've only gotten like 1 or 2 bottles and been perfectly fine.
Yeah. Do you even need the bug net? Is that something you even need?
Nope.
But it's such a handy little thing. You help the little kid out, and he gives you a net, and you can go out and catch fairies, and you can put them in your bottles that you don't need, and you can, that way you can go on. It saves you in a pickle.
Saves you when you're out of life, and boom, you're back in. You're back in the game.
I think the important part of that is that it added a replay value when at the time there wasn't necessarily replay value. I think this is maybe one of the first consoles to really kind of introduce that idea. The original, Super Mario Brothers was linear. The original Legend of Zelda was not linear, but definitely had the different dungeons you had to get to, and then once you were done,
you were done. At the time, that was like...
At the time,
that was groundbreaking. You're not just moving from one side of the screen to the other. You are dropped into a world, and you're gone. You're doing whatever you want.
So what is great about this game and some other games of this era is the fact that it has that replay value. You begin to see that at this point in time, and Legend of Zelda definitely exemplifies that.
Yes, definitely. I love it. One of the other things I do have to say, going to a technical point, since we've done a lot of the game itself, the controls are just so amazing and tight, and they're there. The push of the button just feels right, and on every console I've ever played it on, because I've played it on pretty much everything, mostly legal. I always have a legal copy of the game. Let's just put it at that. Every console I played it on, no matter what, it is just a amazingly controlling game. Link moves the way he should move. He fights the way he fights.
I will come back around to that, because I do have a note on that when we get to the cons section.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that one. So Next Pro is that this is the game that introduced the concept of the Master Sword. I mean, and it has become such a staple of the franchise, the Master Sword itself. This is where it was introduced. It obviously rose to prevalence when you saw it in 3D in the Ocarina of Time, and subsequently made an appearance in each additional game. But this is the game where it first came to life. And I know in the original they had the wooden sword, they had the white sword, and then they had the magic sword, which if you really wanted to try to stretch and say, well, that technically that could be the Master Sword. It's just an earlier incarnation. This is the first time it was called the Master Sword. I think it was the first time it's called the Blade of Evil's Bane.
Yeah, this is the first time it is focused on and really this is the first time it impacted the story, because it was a main story feature.
It's a main item in the story.
And it was needed to progress the story. Yep. It was needed to
collect your 3 pendants, and then you go into the Lost Woods, and you try to not get lost.
Yeah, well, there's many a times I got lost in that woods as a young child. Yeah. But yeah, this is the first time the Master Sword made its debut, and it's really the first time that it obviously, since it's the first time it made its debut, it was just such a prevalent part of the game,
of the story.
And you see it now in almost every game that the Master Sword is a huge part.
It is a huge part because of this game. Yeah. So next one is the bosses. The bosses in this game were just so good. They were so good. From a gameplay perspective, and again, at the time, I know this has become kind of a staple of the Zelda franchise, but at the time, the fact that a lot of the time the weapons that you would get were, sometimes directly related to the boss that you were fighting.
They are almost always directly related to the boss.
It was such a cool concept the first time, you played it. And it always gave you that hint. It's like, well, I got this weapon here. Maybe this will do something against this guy,
And then you figure it out and you're like, whoa, I did it. That weapon makes sense. I got to keep on using it. Let's
Yep.
keep on using it. And the boss battles just kept you. They kept you on your toes, and you're like, I've got 3 hearts left, and I've got my hook shot. And the one enemy that comes to mind because I love the hook shot is the I can't remember his name.
I don't know any of their names off the top of my head.
Some of them I know,
but
Helmut Sword King always comes to mind.
Is that the one with
the hammer?
Yes, yeah.
He's cool. Break his.
I think that's the thing. Is that even if you don't know the names of the characters, if you're not like that level of hardcore, like I can still vividly picture, and this goes back to the art part of it, vividly picture many enemies and could probably describe them to you. I mean, there's that guy who looks like a Tyrannosaurus or not a Tyrannosaurus. He looks like a Triceratops. There, the guy that you were just describing.
The Helmut Sword King.
The Helmut Sword King. And then there's the Wiggler guy there. What is he?
I can't remember.
So there's the Wiggler guy that runs around in the top of one of the tower place there.
No, it's not Wriggler. Wriggler's from Mario.
Yeah, no, that's
a different guy.
There's
I hated that boss. He frustrated the hell out of me. But I loved him at the same time because every time you got that shot in,
and he recoiled, and you're like, yeah, I gotcha.
And then he'd come back out faster, and you're like, okay, I need to do something.
But there was just so many great.
It speaks to the boss design that every boss made you think on your toes, and they were all
visually interesting, and the technique that you needed to build to defeat them was unique for each of them.
For each boss, testing your skill for each different boss, which I liked. I thought that was great because none of them were. You didn't get into a rhythm where it's another boss.
Yeah, I just gotta
swipe at it
button mash until we get to the end. Yeah.
No, you had to
use strategy.
You had to use strategy. The Helmut Sword King, you have to take the magic hammer, break off his helmet, and then you gotta hit his weak spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all of those things that really made the bosses just so much fun. And Zelda's bosses have always been very well done.
Yeah.
But for some reason, A Link to the Past really got it right, even compared to some of the newer games and iterations in the franchise.
Sure.
Going, to Skyward Sword, I think A Link Between Worlds is the latest, or Triforce Heroes, but we don't go there. Link Between Worlds, even these newer games don't quite capture the same rush with these boss battles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's once again a testament to the game as to how well it was put together. That it came out in 1992. It's almost 30 years later that they are still that good.
Yeah,
still that much fun to play.
Yep, very fun. So then our next point comes to the atmosphere of the game, and I think we've kind of touched upon this in a lot of different ways, but you start out this game and your uncle's like, stay at the house and I'm gonna go take care of something, and you ignore him because
with his sword and his shield.
Yeah, with his little sword and shield. You ignore your mustachioed uncle and you follow him, and familiar. You end up in this world, and it really kind of sucks you in, and I think that's because the atmosphere and the tone of the world is just so well executed. There's the vibrant colors. Yep. There's it's just such an alive world. That you walk around certain places and bugs will fly out and birds will fly out of trees. You ram into trees and apples will fall out.
Always one of my favorite parts.
You go, and I remember this really sticks out specifically, is like when you finally get to the sanctuary, the church, essentially it's a church, but they call it sanctuary. I'm sure there's a reason why they didn't call it church.
Yeah, they censored that.
Yeah. You get to this church, and there's this music playing in the background, and it feels right. It feels right. Everything feels right about the world. Right. So like the tone was just spot on.
Going back to the beginning where you betray your uncle and go out, one of the coolest parts is...
I wouldn't say betray so much as disobey.
Kind of do the child thing and disobey your elders.
Absolutely, yeah.
You walk out, and the first thing you do when you walk out, it's raining.
Yeah.
It's just hardcore raining thunder. They flash the screen to do lightning, and you're just like, wow, this is... Like back in the day, it's like, whoa, This is a
atmosphere,
world. This is a living, breathing place.
Yeah, especially if you think back to what came before, and you look at the original Legend of Zelda, which I hope this doesn't come across as knocking the original Legend of Zelda, because that's another one that's near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But if you come from that game and you see this game, it's such a light year jump in terms of gameplay between the two. So
definitely a huge. And I mean, this is the third series, and this is the third game in the series. Mm-hmm. You got The Legend of Zelda, and then Zelda 2: Link's Adventure. Mm-hmm. Link's Adventure is the black sheep of the family.
It's a little bit of the black sheep.
So most people,
different.
Most people are coming from the original Legend of Zelda and going to this, and just it blows your mind. It is, and I played the original Legend of Zelda, and I love it. It is a very good game, but this game and out of all the games
at the time, and keep in mind, there's a lot of nostalgia that we have kind of applied to this too, so that may be coloring us just slightly, but I think a lot of our comments hold up.
Yeah, this game tops top 10 lists of NES games of all time. In many a list, they top it, so they put it at the top.
I think we're talking completely.
Yeah, we're not completely wrong in thinking that this is definitely one of the best games on the SNES.
Yeah. So, like all of our reviews, and before you flame us too hard, all our reviews have a pro list and a con list. But our con list is obviously extremely light, and even some of the things that we added in there are kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we'll go through them. First of all,
you put this one too much fun?
Too much fun? Question mark. It's way too much fun, which leads us into the next one, which would be
addicting.
It's addicting. Like is that a con because you don't want to ever put it down? You don't get anything done.
And then the white elephant in the room, and it's been everywhere, all over the internet. Link has pink hair.
Pink hair? Yeah. Why does he have pink hair? You know,
I don't know. He just has pink hair.
You know, I guess from a character design perspective, if you are creating a character, the pink hair would be something that would make him stand out and make him unique amongst all of his surroundings, and it certainly lends to later on in the game when he becomes the bunny.
Yes, yep.
So, but I mean, and we're really grasping at straws for cons here.
Nitpicking.
Linear gameplay. The first game was the original Legend of Zelda game. Really gave you the opportunity to kind of
and this was my con only because the original Legend of Zelda, they drop you in the world and you just go. You can tackle the dungeons any way you
whatever way you want to do it.
And I remember playing the original Legend of Zelda and stumbling across level 8. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I need to leave. Is that the one
you accidentally burn the bush?
Yeah, one of the ones where you burn the bush or you blow up a rock.
And you accidentally walk in, you're like, whoa!
And you're like, I don't think I should be here right now with my wooden sword and wooden boomerang. So with this game, it is a lot more linear, but it lends better to the story, obviously.
Obviously. And it's funny that you bring that up, because that's something that is kind of interesting, because I think the Legend of Zelda franchise in general is trying to go back to that non-linear type of play where you can kind of bounce around and hit any of the dungeons.
Especially,
and we saw that in and we'll talk about this in another podcast in Link Between Worlds, and I think that's something that they're targeting for the biggest
the biggest thing with the newest Legend of Zelda announced at E3, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, is the fact that it is an open world RPG where you can pretty much do anything you want, which I think looks pretty cool.
So it's interesting. So, and this last one is actually one that I have, and Alex disagrees with me on this one, but I didn't think the Game Boy Advance port was as smooth for me as I would have hoped. Now, obviously, any opportunity to take this game and put it in your pocket and go on the go with you is awesome. And don't get me wrong, they did a great job. But to me, one of the issues I had with this game is that, you're going from a system that had so many buttons on it. You had 2 shoulder buttons, you had 4 letter buttons, face buttons, a D-pad, a start and select. So in here, you're automatically down 2 buttons. So what they had to do is they had to kind of be creative in terms of mapping certain functionalities to some of the other buttons. And to me, it hindered the gameplay a little bit, because one of the things you touched upon was like the really tight controls. And to me, I felt that was something that was, even though very well executed here, maybe is something that suffered a little bit and wasn't as well executed as it was on the original system.
Yeah, I guess for me, I hopped at the opportunity. I get what you're saying. I hopped at the opportunity, though, to be able to take this game on the go and have just one of my favorite games of all time in my pocket. I got many hours of use out of this game, and I loved it. I think they did very well with the controls. The only problem I had with the port was, for some reason, they added Link's voice, which I didn't like.
Oh, right,
from Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
He yas and does all that stuff. I didn't like that because I thought it was kind of dumb and not necessary.
It was an unneeded addition.
But what they did add in the Game Boy Advance version, which I did like, was the little Four Swords adventure that they added. If you had a friend, 4 friends, for me it was only 1 friend because I'm a loser, you could link up and play a game with 4 different links, where each controlling a different link to solve different puzzles. And if you beat that game, it unlocked a special dungeon in the Game Boy Advance version that had you fighting some more powerful versions of A Link to the Past bosses, and had you fight a new final boss that gave you actually a different ending.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
The ending, I mean, is the ending spectacular, amazing, adds tons of different stuff? No. What it does is it names all the dungeons.
Replay value.
Yeah, it names all the dungeons and it names all the main enemies. Instead of the original ending that gave you an epilogue, that's what happens when you beat the Four Sword Adventure dungeon. I forget, I think it's just the Four Swords dungeon. But that was one of the things I kind of liked. It does add that replay value.
Cool.
And it's neat. You can always go back. Sometimes before we filmed this podcast, I went back and I beat the dungeon again. I beat the main boss. And that's kind of cool before my Game Boy finally pooped the bed in terms of battery life.
So I think that brings us kind of to the conclusion of our podcast here. But let's talk about grades, as if it's really a question as to what we're applying, in terms of this game. So Alex, what would your grade be for Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past?
It's obviously A+, 10 out of 10, fantastic.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to put on it, this is for me, even though it's some nostalgia, this is a perfect Legend of Zelda game to me. This is my favorite Legend of Zelda game. I have the box copy. I have all these other copies that I love to play. I play the game every year. I do a once a year playthrough. I've done no die runs. Mm-hmm. I've done all that sort of stuff just to squeeze every ounce out of this game, and it is my favorite game. And I still play it. I still play it every year. Yeah. And every time there's a new iteration on a different console, I buy it.
Yeah. So I would have to agree. I mean, my grade is an A+, whatever you want to give it. It was just such a great game, and a lot of fond memories that go along with it. So thank you everybody for joining us today on the Cioffi Brothers podcast, and for joining us for our review of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Thank you, Butch.
Yeah, seriously, guys, if you have a chance,
pick it up if you haven't already.
Pick it up. There are so many different ways to get a hold of it.
Seriously.
The latest would be the 3DS Virtual Console version.
Yeah.
But the Wii U.
You can do it on the Wii, the Wii U. There's lots of opportunities.
So many different ways.
Pick up an old console. Game. It's worth doing to play it and to feel that old and cold controller in your hand. There's something about the tactile feeling, and I noticed that when I'm playing original Nintendo games, because that was kind of more of my console, is there's something that's really missing when you don't have the old buttons and everything underneath your fingertips.
And it just you gotta play it. Play the game. Buy an SNES if you have to. Just play it.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, and we will see you next time.